So, whether you want to get a selfie with the quokkas, perhaps you want to go swimming with the whale sharks at Nigaloo Reef, or you are just so keen to taste all that stunning wine from the Margaret River region, then WA is certainly the answer for you. I have with me today Pat from Tourism WA, who is so generously going to take us through all of the highlights that WA has to offer. Welcome, Pat.
Hi, Cassandra.
Lovely to have you. And again, thank you so much for your time. But let's not waste any more time because I know you've got a lot to talk about. I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm excited to see what you've got to say.
Fantastic. Thanks, Cassandra. And great opportunity to talk to you all about Western Australia at the moment, because it is very topical in terms of people wanting to go over there. And this presentation will focus on a couple of areas, mainly Perth and the Margaret River and Southwest region, simply because the rest of the state's just too big to fit in the short amount of time that we have today. As I've mentioned, Perth is the main gateway for the state, as we know. It's about a 4 to 5 hour flight from many of the East Coast capitals, of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane in particular, and slightly shorter, obviously, from Adelaide. And while it is the gateway, there are other routes that you can fly into WA, mainly Broome, at certain times of the year where they do have direct flights, again, from Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. So you do have that flexibility. And also today, I'm going to touch on very briefly on a new flight that was due to start this year, but it's been postponed to next year. And that's a Melbourne to Busselton/Margaret River direct flight, which is really exciting for us to share with you today. So the presentation will, as I mentioned, talk about Perth and the Southwest. But for any visitors to the state, we also recommend contemplating a road trip option in terms of visiting the many sort of different regions that we have within the state. It is a vast state, 1/3 the size of Australia. And unless you're flying to the northern regions like Broome and Kununurra, you can access the lower part of the states easily with a car rental or a camper van, and it makes it a lot more flexible in terms of where you can go, and it's certainly at certain times of the year as well. It gives you that flexibility. So consider that seriously when you're planning your trip to WA. And you can see a brochure cover there. We do produce a road trip state brochure that gives you suggested itineraries that you can follow at any part of the state, and it gives you all the vital information in terms of distances, how much time to allow, the key attractions in each of those locations that you're visiting, and any certain events that are happening that you should be mindful of when you're planning your itinerary, because you don't want to be missing out on, say, seeing the staircase to the moon if you're up in Broome at a certain time. So you can download this from the Tourism Western Australia website. So it is a free brochure that you can download in a PDF copy as well. So Perth, if you haven't been to Perth in the last few years, you really need to try and get over there as soon as you can. Why I say that is obviously I'm a West Australian. I grew up in Perth. So even though I'm living in Sydney now, home for me is Perth. My family are over there. I grew up over there. I have all the emotional connections that Western Australia pulls at my heart every day. And the city has gone through a massive transformation, probably once in 100 years, driven by the mining boom that Western Australia has experienced over the last 10 plus years. And the mining boom has allowed us to, and the government over there, to develop some new tourism infrastructure and facilities. And some of these I'll touch on today. A lot of the hotel developers have moved in and built magnificent 5 to 6 star accommodation options, which I'll talk about a little bit as well. And even the image that you see there is of a new facility called Elizabeth Quay, a new precinct that's been developed only in the last 5 years. The area you see there with the water 5 years ago was all parkland, it was all grass. And the concept there was we brought the Swan River closer to the city. And then conversely, we then brought the city closer to another part of the city precinct called Northbridge. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit later on. But wonderful hotels. People always say to me, oh, it's so far to go. It's so expensive to go. But the reality of it is the airfare will be a little bit more expensive compared to some of the shorter routes on the East Coast. But what offsets that very quickly is the value in accommodation that you'll get in Perth. So those 5-star and even 6-star hotels and the 4 stars that have been built in the last 5 to 6 years, of which there's about, 5,000 rooms that we've added into the Perth inventory stock. It means that it's quite competitive. So you can get 5-star accommodation, 6-star accommodation for close to $300 per night. And of course, if you go down the scale to the 4 and 3 stars, it becomes even greater value. So the cost of flying there is very easily offset by the cheaper accommodation options that you have available. The Perth region, I want to quickly touch on the map that you see in front of you. It stretches from Perth up to what we call the Sunset Coast, roughly about 80 kilometres north of Perth, and then similarly south of Perth to Mandurah, about 77 kilometres, and then east of Perth to the Swan Valley and the Perth Hills, and beyond that into the Avon Valley. And then if you're game to hop on a boat, which a lot of people are doing these days, and you can fly there as well, you can head across to Rottnest Island, about 10 miles off the coast. Rottnest is a year-round destination in its own right. So lots of things to do for the first-time visitor in Perth. Probably aim to spend at least 5 days, 5 nights in Perth to do it any justice. And most people that are doing Perth for the first time will also include a trip either to the southwest, or they'll head north as far as maybe Geraldton, Kalbarri for the first time. And then beyond that, they may come back and do Exmouth, which is about 1,200 kilometres north. The image you see in front of you there is one of the 19 beaches that we have in the sunniest capital in Australia, Perth. It's called Cottesloe Beach, a family-friendly beach. You can see the waves there are very subdued, protected by the groin that you see there. It is a netted beach now as well. So, there are sharks all up and down the Australian coastline, and now Cottesloe has been netted off, so it makes it very safe to swim. I mentioned before some of the new tourism attractions and infrastructure that the government has spent on. There's some images there of some new squares that have been built within Perth. The restaurant scene, the nightlife scene, the bar scene has really come of age. It's very much similar to what you're probably used to on the East Coast, for Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, for example, and Adelaide. So all of our licensing laws have changed to make it much more user-friendly for visitors as well. One of the most important things that have happened in the last few years is the development of the new Perth Stadium, or as it's commonly commercially known, Optus Stadium, a magnificent 60,000-seat sporting facility that's used not just for sport, but also entertainment. We use it for special events as well, for any big concerts and so on. But obviously it's the home for our AFL teams, our cricketers, and we do host a number of other events, like we've hosted the Bledisloe Cup last year, and we've had State of Origin games, and we also tend to attract the EPL teams from England after their season finishes, to come and play. We had Manchester United, we've had Leeds and other great teams. Chelsea have been as well. So that's something that we aim to do every year. So Optus Stadium is a game changer, so to speak. And it's right next to the new Crown complex, the new Crown Towers, the third hotel within the Crown group that they built in the Burswood Peninsula, just to the left of that image there. The bridge that you see crossing the river is a new pedestrian bridge that links East Perth to the stadium. So on game day, you can only get to the stadium either by public transport or by walking, which is fantastic. So it keeps that area really easy to get in and out. It doesn't make it too difficult for anybody visiting one of the events there. I mentioned the 19 beaches. If you're a West Australian, particularly if you're from Perth, you love the beaches. You love going to see the famous Indian Ocean sunsets like you see there. It's quite common to see locals there by the beach with some fish and chips and a glass of wine, or a nice cold beer, watching the sunset. It's one of those things that they do religiously, in inverted commas, and it's something you can do year round as well. It's not just in summer. And there's some other images of some of our beaches. So you can go snorkeling on some of the beaches there. So I guess the main difference with our beaches and the East Coast beaches is that it's endless white sand beaches. Yes, you've got some snorkeling options there, but unlike Sydney, where you've got the bay beaches, the beaches in Perth are endless white sandy beaches. You can just drive from one spot to the other. And I'm pleased to say that there's some fantastic cafes and restaurants that have opened along the beaches as well, particularly along Scarborough Beach, City Beach, Cottesloe I've mentioned, and of course at Fremantle, they have their own beach called Port Beach. There's some wonderful eating options there as well. And speaking of Fremantle, this is a terrific aerial overview of Freo, as we call it. The locals call it Freo. We like to abbreviate everything. It's a separate city, only about 19 kilometres as the crow flies from Perth. You can see Perth in the distance there, the high-rise buildings just jutting out. It is a port city, so our cruise ships are coming through here. It's a fishing port as well, so you can get great seafood meals here. You can see the cray fishermen, the normal fishermen coming in. It's a wonderful hive of activity. It was also home for the America's Cup for about 3 or 4 years. Until 1987. So 1986-87, the defence of the America's Cup took place here as well. So it was a wonderful time. I was living in Perth at the time, and I'll never forget it. Perth was just fantastic to be there at that time. Unlike Perth, Fremantle has retained more of its heritage buildings. The one that you see in front of you there is of the Fremantle markets. A lot of the buildings in Fremantle were convict built as well. So it's a lovely place to go to contrast with Perth, which tends to have a lot more modern buildings throughout as well. Lots of boutique bars and cafes. You can see little creatures there. Something really special for people. It's a good walking town as well. You can do your own walking tour, and you can catch public transport. You can drive there from Perth. It's very easy. It's all built up. It's easily accessible either on the train, bus, or you can go catch a ferry as well from Perth, Barrack Street to Fremantle as well. Off the coast, as I mentioned before, about 10 kilometres is Rottnest Island, our now year-round playground. Rottnest is going through a mini transformation in its own right. So the image you see there is of a new 5-star glamping resort called Pinky's. And again, you can see the white sandy beaches and the little bays throughout. Rottnest is just a fantastic destination. It's an island for the people. It's probably the best way to describe it to you. The government there have been very careful not to overdevelop it and not to make it too expensive and out of reach for the locals. It is for the locals first and foremost to enjoy. And then, of course, our visitors from interstate and international also like to go there because of that quokka phenomena that Cassandra touched on. So I'll show you that in a minute. Easily accessible from Perth, Fremantle or Hillary's Boat Harbour, which is north of one of the northern beaches of Perth. You can also fly there as well. There are 3 operators that operate vessels to Rottnest from Perth, so it's very competitive. And most people for the first time will hire a bike, or they may hop on the little bus that takes you around the island. There is no other vehicles on the island. You can't take a car, you can't cab, there's no Ubers or anything like that. It's very much a walking or a sightseeing island as well. Beautiful for snorkeling because most of the island is surrounded by reef. The water is crystal clear, so it's great for snorkeling, diving, even kayaking. And again, you can catch lobsters off Rottnest as well. It's quite an amazing island. And you've got to do the quokka selfie while you're there. So this little chap, we've actually now celebrate the quokka birthday on the 1st of June every year. So the quokka has been fantastic for the state, particularly Rottnest and Perth, but also the state in general. For people are now going to see the quokka in winter, whereas normally Rottnest would be just a summer destination, but it's now all year round because of this little friendly fella, the quokka. So I'd encourage you to go over there if you can. Okay, if we head east of Perth, to the Swan Valley. It's only about 25 minutes drive from the city centre. It's a wonderful area to go and visit. It's so close to the city. Working wineries, breweries, lots of attractions, lots of little cafes, chocolatiers. It's a foodie haven and something that's accessible. It is accessible via the boat. You can do cruises on the Swan River up from Perth, or you can self-drive there and do your own tour. But of course, if you're on a wine tour, you'd want to be careful and not drink and drive, of course. But wonderful place to go and visit. And it's very close to the airport. It's not that far from Perth Airport. So For people that are looking for something to do on the last day of Perth and they may have an afternoon flight, it's something they can go and spend a few hours in and then drop their hire car back at the airport and then hop on their flight back to the East Coast. WA Gourmet Escape is our major event that we run in Western Australia from a food perspective. We combine that with Margaret River. The Gourmet Escape started in Margaret River, but now it's been expanded to include the Swan Valley. So that's a wonderful thing to do in November. It's coming up soon. And there's some scenery and images of the wonderful wineries, and you can see the small Swan River in the backdrop there as well. Absolutely fantastic. Beyond the Perth Hills is an area called the Avon Valley. The Avon Valley, probably loosely speaking, I classify this as a heritage area. So we've got some beautiful old towns that have remained and retained their charm. Places like 2J, York, New Norcia. These towns are in a cocoon sort of way because the main road didn't go through those towns. The train line linking Perth and the east didn't go through those towns. It went through another town called Northam. And Northam being the main town in that area has modernised, but the others, the heritage ones that I've mentioned, are wonderful to go and visit. And you can do self-drive from Perth easily. You can do a one-day trip or you can stay overnight in one of those wonderful places. Great to see and do. Heading south of Perth, you've got Rockingham. Only about 45 minutes drive. That's a good aquatic water playground with the penguins, the seals, the dolphins. You can actually swim with all of those year round. Absolutely fantastic. There's some shipwrecks there as well to have a look at. Very safe to do. And then a bit further south, about, as I mentioned before, 77 kilometres, you've got Mandurah. And Mandurah is the most southern part of that Perth precinct. Beyond that, you're heading towards Bunbury, Busselton and Margaret River, which I'll touch on very shortly. So it's a nice place to go and visit Mandurah. Big water inlet. They do a lot of crabbing there. There's prawning. You can go in the water with a scoop net. And this is what I did as a child growing up. All our holidays, particularly in the summer, we'd go down and do crabbing with scoop nets. It was just absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to leave Perth now and quickly go on to the next part, Margaret River in the southwest. This is the most popular region outside of Perth for any of our visitors. So roughly about 20 to 25% of all our visitors will go and visit Australia's southwest, commonly known as that Margaret River Albany sort of precinct. And here's a map showing you the main towns along the coast and inland being extremely attractive from a different perspective, mainly from a forest perspective. So you've got beautiful tall karri forests all the way through from, say, Pemberton down to Northcliffe, Walpole. And that contrasts with the coastal towns that we know, such as Margaret River, Dunsborough, Busselton, and across to Denmark and Albany. Absolutely amazing. I just want to spend a bit of time on this area because this is such an important part of the state for us. It's very different to the northern part of WA, which tends to be a lot more remote, obviously. Very different vegetation to Margaret River. So it is world renowned now for our wines and our foods and our truffles and seafood. It is something that people that go there, it's a bucket list item now. And it is definitely a highlight for anybody coming across to WA. The most commonly asked questions I get asked is, how long should I allow to do it justice? Well, you probably want to allow at least 3 to 5 days, depending on how much you want to cover in the area down in the southwest. So to give you a rough idea, if you were to drive Perth to Margaret River to Pemberton to Albany and then back to Perth, that's roughly 1,000 kilometres. So you'd want to allow probably 5 nights on that particular itinerary, 2 nights in, say, Margaret River, 1 night in Pemberton, and then another 2 nights in Albany. And then from Albany, it's only 400 kilometres back to Perth. And I say only because the road's not that busy compared to the East Coast. You can easily do that road on the Albany Highway, and you could be, again, in the city within 5 hours comfortably. So it's something to consider as well. We've got some wonderful signature experiences there. These are our 5-star ultimate experiences that not only us and Tourism Western Australia, but also Tourism Australia promotes globally. So places like Cape Lodge, the accommodation, 5-star accommodation house you see there, the winery experiences that I mentioned there, like Vas Felix and Lewin Estate and Voyager Estate, and some of the touring experiences like whaling at Naturalist Charters, and then some of the walking tours, the Cape to Cape walking track is part of our signature experience as well. And then you've got in Albany, the National Anzac Centre, an absolutely magnificent facility that commemorates the last staging post of the Anzacs before they left for World War I. Most of them seeing Albany as their last port of call, or last land site of Australia before they sailed through the Indian Ocean across to Africa, Northern Africa. And we've also got a lot of Indigenous tourism experiences, Aboriginal experiences, through Coolmore Dreaming and Cape Cultural Tours as well. So absolutely phenomenal sort of experiences. That's why you need to allow at least 5 days, 5 nights down there. And some of the events that you'll see through the area, you've got Taste Great Southern, the Margaret River Surfing Pro, the Truffle Kerfuffle, which happens in Manjimup, Cabin Fever, Cinefest Oz, which is a movie festival, and of course the Gourmet Escape that I mentioned before, that's held in conjunction with the Swan Valley. Some inspirational itineraries for you: 3 nights in Margaret River, or 7 nights in the southwest, or 5 nights luxury Perth and Margaret River. The image you see there is of the Busselton Jetty, the longest wooden jetty in the southern hemisphere. You can catch a little train that takes you to the end of that. And then underneath that building there is an underwater aquarium as well. You can go down and see the fish live in front of you as well. So again, there's another suggested itinerary for people that haven't been to the region. You can see they're doing the coastal walk there as well. It's very much soft adventure, so you don't have to be extremely fit for this. As long as you've got some mobility. Obviously, you've got to be able to carry a little backpack, but yeah, easy to get around. I classify it as soft adventure. It's not like we're going to get you to jump off a bridge like a bungee jump or anything like that. It's totally not that experience at all. The Dolphin Discovery Centre here in Bunbury is new. That opened only about a year or so ago after a major renovation. That's a wonderful facility because we do get dolphins coming into Bunbury in the bay, Kumbana Bay, that you can see there, as well as the more famous dolphins up at Monkey Mia, about 850 kilometres north of Perth. So this is only 2 hours south of Perth versus, about 10 hours drive north to get to Monkey Mia. And again, there are some suggested itineraries here for you. And again, this is available online through Australia's Southwest, but I just thought it'd be good to share with you some ideas and inspiration for first-time visitors. And that way, people will feel more comfortable if they've not been there before, that it's all done for them. It gives you suggested itineraries, where to stay, et cetera, et cetera. So it really makes it quite easy for you. All you got to do is download it and have a look at it and then book. And here's the Perth to Margaret River Luxury Experience one, as I mentioned before. And then finally, I just want to touch on Albany. Now, a lot of people don't realise that Albany was founded before Perth, or the Swan River Colony as it was originally known, 3 years prior. So Albany was founded in 1826, and it was originally a military port. And then the Swan River Colony was founded in 1829, 3 years later. But it's a wonderful heritage and historical town. I love going to Albany. It's a wonderful natural port, great foods down there, wonderful wineries right through the Great Southern. It'd be hard to pull yourself away once you get to the Albany Great Southern area. It's just phenomenal. Again, it's different to Margaret River and certainly different to Perth. And you can fly there with Rex, and you can drive there as well, of course. And there are tours that are going through there all the time. So lots of things to see and do. I mentioned the National Anzac Centre that you can see there. There's wonderful beaches, lots of good accommodation and great restaurants, well-renowned. And beyond Albany, if you have more time, you can go further to Bremer Bay and Esperance and up to Kalgoorlie, and then Kalgoorlie back to Perth. But that will add in quite a considerable amount more kilometres. But if you're just going to be going to Albany and then back to Perth, then it makes it a lot easier for the first-time visitor. But certainly would encourage you Now, just before I finish, I mentioned that new service between Melbourne and Busselton that we were planning on starting this year. So we are looking at starting that next year because of the situation with the COVID, but we'll be looking at doing this again next year and flying Melbourne to Busselton with Jetstar, so which is fantastic for those of you that live in Melbourne. You'll be able to go straight there and save yourself 3 hours driving from Perth to Margaret River. And that's a wrap from me. So if there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to get in touch with the team, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Oh my goodness, Pat, thank you so much. I am, every time I see pictures of WA, I am just so inspired to get there and then to hear about all the little things like truffle kerfuffle. I didn't even know that existed. I am absolutely going to go to that festival. That sounds like fun to me. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for watching. I know that we have people from all over Australia, some who have access to WA right now, others who don't. But guys, it won't be too long and we'll all be able to travel, hopefully, freely through our beautiful country again. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.